there's so many broad spectrums of so many things, so it's like, I feel like having a unified stance on what each thing means is going to be very beneficial to this.
Like liberal can mean a lot of things.
It's a lot of things. Liberal, or even there's so many different versions of socialism and communism and capitalism, and right. there's so many branches of each one. So I guess I don't know, maybe just go through and explain it, but I don't know. I feel like that might be beneficial. We can do it maybe after we talk about our ideas.
I had
views.
I had a similar thought too. Just when I was just thinking about how I was going to do this, and because I don't like how. I think Brian, you said it. You said it well last week that like just because you're one thing doesn't mean. I don't even like to say as a blah blah blah. I feel this way. I don't even like.
Yeah,
because
same.
But I thought we could just do that, and then, just make this kind of really relaxed, and we could just like sort of interview each other, and just kind of make it an introductory thing. And do we have everything figured out to post this, or do you guys have any ideas on how to
I'm just here recording, and it'd be a different viewpoint.
Well, if it can record and you can save it, we could find a way to do it.
Yeah, it depends on how much production you want to put into it. Like, do you want to cut things out, move them around, or add, I don't know, whatever you can do to make a video more interesting, or I don't know, whatever you had in vision for the visuals, the podcast or the visual, whatever you put up.
I don't think we need to do that. This is just my vote. I'm not trying to speak for everybody. I don't think we need to do that at all. I was listening to Trigonometry recently, and they were talking about how fucking awful their first few episodes were.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think of this, and I was like, I kind of like that everybody says that. I mean, everybody's like, holy shit, if you go back to...
Oh, I bet,
episodes, it's terrible,
Definitely.
All I could think of is like if we just had the audio and if we had like an image up or something like that, and then it's just like you post it on YouTube, and then it's just like it's an image the entire time, but you're listening to it.
Okay.
To start off, I don't know if GarageBand does that now that I think about it, so I might need to get Adobe again or something. Because Adobe, you could just like there was a movie editor, so you could like add images and stuff, and then add audio as well. But I don't know if GarageBand allows you to.
Duncan Trussell's podcast does that. That's how, or he did years ago. I haven't listened to his podcast in a long time, but he has like his logo when you go to the YouTube channel, and it's just him talking to, and he has. I don't know if y'all are familiar with him, but he has some, big hitters on this show, and he just has his stupid. I say stupid with all the love in the world, but his trippy ass, Duncan Trussell Family Hour logo, and then it's just, purple and white and whatever, and then it's just audio in the background.
I figured that'd be the easiest to start off with. So, and
we could have one of y'all do, or me or whatever. I know that you guys have experience doing an AI generated.
On my camera, that's pointing directly over at Eric, so I don't know if that looks like it to you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, now I get it. I was like, you cock or something?
Nah, bro.
The power of the penis.
Okay. Does anybody have? Does anybody have a statement or anything?
No.
What was the question?
I can wing it. I'm happy doing that. Eric, you do a pretty good job. I know typically they're scripted, but just an opening statement, or how did you? I meant to write one down, and I didn't.
Yeah, I wrote a little thing, which I could certainly go into for me.
Are you able to attach onto that? Are you able to? Again, I can wing it if not, but do you have something you can attach onto that in the beginning that'll just get this going?
Oh, like an opener type of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can go into that.
Well, that would just be, I guess, me winging that. But I guess I would just say, I guess this is what our first podcast, right, officially that we're putting out here in October of 2023. We figured we'd start off with just kind of detailing what our individual beliefs are, our thoughts, as best as we can even understand them ourselves. And so we just thought we'd talk to each other and just kind of, I guess, put on the table, show our cards, if you will, just who we are and where we're at. So I guess as time goes on, we might see ourselves kind of evolve and change, but just so, the audience and ourselves kind of knows what angle we're coming from to begin with. So that's what we thought we'd do. So.
Well, damn, you nailed it, dude.
Right. Good job, Eric.
Thanks. Okay, so for my opening statement, I'll read my little thing. So don't get your hopes up. It's not that good, but it's something.
All right, Mr. Lawyer.
Mr. Lawyer. All right.
Open statement.
I took a questionnaire online a few years back that would put you on the left to right spectrum with the hope of seeing how my thoughts shook out and where I fell. For years, I would have said that I was a Democrat, mainly because I viewed Republicans as being religious extremists. But since 2016, I certainly have been flirting with Republican ideas, coming to think that perhaps some of the Republican standpoints were misrepresented, as another possibility being that Democrats simply have just gone to a place that I couldn't follow. When all was said and done, I came out as slightly right from center on the questionnaire, an outcome I was pleased with, and one that gave me a good laugh when my wife and mother took the questionnaire because they both came back as far left as you could go. The joke to me being that they were the extremists. Out of the three of us, anyways. Saying where one fits on the spectrum is difficult, though. Take abortions, for starters. I believe the woman has a right to choose, but I also believe there is a point where it's no longer just the woman's choice. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I believe in background checks. I believe that we need to do what we can to cut down illegal immigration. And I believe that welcoming immigrants is a large part of America's strength, etc. Give me another, and most likely will come down more moderate because I believe in all of our rights as Americans and needing to find a path to compromise. I believe that you can be transgender, but I believe that you should be going to the sports or bathroom that represents your biological sex. All in all, I believe in limited federal government and that the power should be with the states to better accommodate for the political spectrum, where the West Coast and Northeast can be as liberal as they want while adhering to the Constitution, that the South and Middle America can be as conservative as they want while adhering to the Constitution. It has been a journey from voting for Obama in 2012 and Trump in 2020. My motives at times can be a mystery even to me, but in my adult life of following the Socratic method, or to those who would disagree with me being the devil's advocate, I'm trying to find that balance and compromise in myself and in the outside world. I acknowledge that some of the things that I have mentioned could lead to things I don't agree with, and that I would be certainly willing to rethink those stances, as I have those of the Democratic Party. That's my opener.
I didn't know you voted for Obama in 2016.
2012, the second one he went for. Yeah, Tori and I went down to Carrollton, one of the state houses.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go next if you're okay with it, Brian.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I was kind of raised with in a very conservative Republican household. We were raised evangelical, very fundamentalist Christian, and I think as a kid, especially like my dad would listen to talk radio growing up. He didn't listen to a lot of music in the car, and I was really attracted to a lot of that. I remember hearing an argument for not raising the minimum wage when I was like 8 years old. That's one of my original political memories, and I remember talking to him about it. He just explained, his argument for not raising it, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I kind of had a lot of that stuff, feed into my head, and for the same reason that I was religious. This isn't a religious discussion, but just for the sake of sort of comparing the two, I went through a phase where I guess you'd call me like usually you use the word lapsed with Catholic, but I consider myself like a lapsed Christian. And one of the issues that I had with the Republican Party is I probably align with them more than I do the Democratic Party, but even that's hard to say. But their issue with there's a lot of church and state issues over there that I have an issue with. And so I kind of had to read, analyze a lot of what I was raised with. And I kind of came to a point to where I read a lot of books. I'm still reading a lot on this and trying to learn a lot and try to figure out what's worked in other countries, what similarities do we have to other countries that have gone down the shitter, and what are the markers that cause that to happen. And I really appreciate what the founding fathers were trying to do. And I guess the basic, like, underlying feeling that I have is that, without using the term God, but you can use that if you like, but nobody has the right to take away your freedom to do whatever you want, aside from if you're with respect to hurting another person or not hurting another person. And there's actually a term for that. It's called the non-aggression principle. And that's sort of the backbone of libertarian philosophy. And the non-aggression principle just means, in simple terms, that you can't get aggressive with me because I'm doing something that you don't like. And that can go into, depending on who you talk to, that can get a little wacky when you're talking about, like, taxes, for instance. Mm-hmm. I'm not against taxes. A lot of people on that side are. But the idea is just that behind any law is a gun. And if at a certain point, if you don't do this, you get put in a cage. And so I think that everybody, in the first world, especially today, has kind of grown up with this idea that, like, that's just how it works. Like, if you break a law, you get thrown in a cage. That's just what happens. And I think that that's extreme. And I think we can loosen a lot of that. I don't think that we need to, I think that we conflate morality with legality. And I don't think that that's necessary. I think we need to break that marriage in our own minds. But I do want to say that as we have more of these conversations, there are things like guns, for instance, or healthcare, where I have sort of idealistically how I think it should look. But especially as I'm getting older and having conversations with people that are like Brian on the other side, there's a chance there to, like, kind of share an olive branch, where I go, okay, I can see what you're saying, and I'm willing to go, okay, like, if we can actually have a conversation about how you can implement these laws in a way that's going to work. Like, it's not just about feelings, like, okay, well, we have to do this because it's the right thing to do. Okay, but can you actually do it? And I think a lot of people on the libertarian end just put a line in the sand and say, we're not doing this, like, you can't. And I'm not thinking in those type of terms. I just think, there's some economic issues where I'm because I have real world experience with it, where I have a pretty solid backbone where I'm going to have conversations about that. But there's a lot of issues where I think that myself and everybody needs to be a little bit more, they need to be able to bend a bit more, And so broadly speaking, I'm a capitalist. I'm a libertarian, broadly speaking. And there's a few issues there where, I don't want to align myself with that 100%. But just broadly speaking, that is my political philosophy.
Okay.
I should have written that down because I was going in several different places there, but I think I got my point across.
Yeah, I don't feel like I could write it down and it would be as true to what it would. I don't know. I feel like sometimes the stuff I just need to just kind of speak it
That's
more. And so, I was raised Democratic essentially, but I don't think it was ever like really pushed on. I just know my parents were. My mom always talks about how her and her dad and their family was very Republican. They went to like a bunch of Republican rallies. She was a young Republican, and stuff happened in like the 60s that changed. They stopped liking it, and so you kind of do what your parents do, and so I kind of just saw that. So I don't really the line with the Democrats, like most of them, like the majority ones, they're too focused on like pure corporations, and I don't like any form of buddy that's like straight pure corporation, especially that they agree that corporations are people. So I feel like that's I don't know, I don't like that. I feel like it's easier to really say things I don't like as opposed to saying what I am, because I feel there are so many, there, not in all, but in a lot of ideologies there are flaws and there are good things. So I don't think it's trying to get to somewhere that's going to be beneficial to everyone is going to be one set determined ideology. I think it's going to be, you're going to have to like a melting pot and mixing things together. You know, I feel like that's how you'll achieve better things. I guess, you know, broadly, like we were saying earlier, there's so many different depths of what a capitalist is, or libertarian, or a conservative. Well, I have brain fart. Or like a socialist, or a communist, or even part of the Green Party. There's so many just different things, but I guess it would be closer to probably like socialist, because I believe in like how important the labor is to make the company successful. Like all these big companies, they need that labor to make their company efficient. Yes, the up top has a part in it, and if they need it, but the majority of what they do is all because the people are in the factories, the warehouses, the drivers, like people that move the product or make what gets you money. So I feel like the workers should have a bigger say in the company, mainly because you'll be more encouraged to be more proud of what you're doing, you know, when it's something you have more of a say in. And I feel like people get better or achieve things faster with cooperation than they do against competition. So I think we work better as and get things faster and more advanced through collaboration as opposed to competition. So let's see what else. I'm kind of iffy on the free market. I don't feel like there's like, I guess it really depends on how you define a free market. If you mean just like complete freedom from government, say, or there's all, I don't know, there's these loose terms, you could just say different things that I know a lot of people have different ideas, like, well, it says free market, so just whatever, or there's some things that are okay and there's some things not, but where is it going with this? That's why I should have written this down. I probably would have been be able to focus on reading the script anyway. But like there's like an outside force controlling like I like what's happened to the market. I don't think that's ever not happened. Like as long as you've had like the rich, which in you know when it was created it was pretty much government, which was the king, the authoritarians, the monarchs. You know they're in control of the land and everything. So most of them just didn't give that up. So I don't feel like there's always been some kind of driving force outside of the free market, regulating, you know, preventing a true free market from happening. So I don't know if it actually could ever happen. I don't know. I haven't done too much delving into like developing that concept, thought theory, but there's something about it. It doesn't seem like it would be beneficial because I feel there's too much risk involved, especially with an economy. Why do you want something that can fluctuate potentially so fast or it takes so slow to recover when you can like regulate something? It reminds me of the Mississippi River and its importance to America's growth and success, and how we were able to use it to like transport goods all across the country and just expand our trade and just become like our economic boom was so dependent on that. But what I'm getting at is that, you know, it's a free just river, you know, that you don't have to pay for a road to be built. You know, you just have to have a boat to be able to go up and down it. And so it's a low that cost, and then but basically it's free because Mother Earth provides it. But all rivers move, like they all move, like they don't stay. It's just not natural for them to stay in place. So if the Mississippi were to shift from where it is now, the economic disaster would be ridiculous to America. And we know this, so we built something I don't remember which military branch, but they built something to secure that the Mississippi will not change its flow, because otherwise it will destroy and ruin the economy, So they're just saying, just because it's free doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing. I feel like another example is like driving in the highway or a street. If we all could go whatever speed we wanted, we could, like, you kind of do it already, but some people are going 100, some people are going 20. Like, it's just not going to work, and like you don't want to naturally work that out. You want to be like, well, you can't go this slow on this part of the road, So there's the certainty of freedom, but there's still an outward, like, to make it feel like it's free, that you can go driving up the highway as opposed to someone going 100 down your school street, So I think that's, for the most part. I agree with you too, David. I'm not a big fan of the whole religious influence of church and state and the government. I don't think it works well historically for them to be meshed together. So I don't like that for any side of government. So I kind of tend to not.
You don't want a theocracy?
No, I do not. I don't know if I'm still this way, but one of the things I would say is that just because I'm not pro-Republican doesn't mean, or how do I say, just because I don't like Republicans doesn't mean I'm pro-Democratic Party, because there's so many variations of things. It's the two-party system's a joke, and so there's just so many other ways to do this, and I don't like the two-party system. There's that.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that people have is they feel like they have to fall into one or the other.
Yeah.
It's binary. And I think that some of that is just a consequence of human psychology. Like, people tend to, and I think you need both liberals and conservatives to balance each other out. But it's also kind of, we do have other parties, but they don't, because of the DNC and the RNC, they don't have a voice,
Yeah.
The way I view the two-party system, though, in a sense, is like one is the gas and one is the brakes. I guess is kind of how I view it, and so it's like that's why I've thought that you want, if a Republican or Democrat wins, you would prefer them to be more moderate, because like maybe they're more leaning left, so they're putting their foot in the gas a little bit more than usual, but there's still like a hesitation. And then vice versa, if you have a Republican in office, like maybe they're putting the brakes on some stuff because we've kind of gone a little too far. That's how I kind of justify the two-party system in my mind. Is that it's a very simple binary thing of just like, do we want to go faster or slow down as we're ultimately moving forward? Because I spoke with David about this a long time ago. I read this book where it had a political spectrum, but actually conservative and liberal were still on the progressive side of the spectrum. Like, truly the only people that are anti-progressive would be it's been too long, but I can't remember the word right now. A regressive. Like, a regressive was like the individual that would actually want you to take it back, but they were arguing in this book that conservative is still progressive. It's a much slower version of it. So anyways,
Michael Malice has a quote, and I'm gonna butcher it, but Michael Malice has a quote that conservatives are just liberals that are going the speed limit. And I think like where a lot of conservatives are right now would be considered liberal, 15, 20 years ago. I think that's true. I think it's also, there's the horseshoe metaphor. And I think that this is very apt today, where if you have people that you have the beginning of a horseshoe where they're disconnected, and you go far enough right or far enough left, you end up in the middle, and then they overlap. And I think that there's a lot of that today. I think that one of the weirdest things, and sometimes I wonder, I'd like to get into this at some point, but Eric has hinted at this with me, that some of the things that I talk about being freaked out by the far left is a consequence of where I live. I do firmly believe that this is starting to seep out into the rest of the country, but I did live in Portland, the most liberal city in the country, for 7 years. But an example of meeting in the middle is, it's becoming sexually conservative, the far left. I mean, where it's like you have to, the way that they talk about sex and engaging in sex with other people, it is starting to seem conservative, where it's like, hold on, let's put the brakes on. Let's, they say it under the fear of, they're talking about like, we want to avoid, you want to avoid sexual assault and things like that, which I think any rational person agrees with. But, depending on who you're talking to, I mean, there's a big thing where like, you have to be, what I'm saying is that you can't be sexually free and have your own sexual preferences anymore as much, at least out here. These are the far left, but I think that their voice is getting louder and louder. And I did see it down there when I was back in Texas for a little bit. But like, give you an example, if you're not interested in a trans person sexually, then you're transphobic. You can't have preferences. I mean, I've said this, like I sexually am not attracted to a certain ethnicity as much. And it's like, okay, well, that's a bigoted thing to say. Those types of things that are, I mean, we all know that that's bullshit. I don't care who you are. You know that that's horseshit. Like you can. Well,
that's the problem. That's the problem with extremes. When you get onto either side, there's just it's the same coin, different sides of the same coin. Just like they have certain things that just like what you're saying with the left, you can find stuff on the right. It's what's interesting about it and what's kind of flex about it. The whole just when a two-party system, you have all that together. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it works that well.
No, I agree with you. I agree with all that. And I think especially on like social issues, we started this talking about the two-party system. I think that one of the things is people feel like they have to be on one side or the other. And then so they go to these fucking incredible extremes, which we're seeing now. And my fear with a lot of that is that, we tend to have the pendulum swing one direction or the other. And when you go so far in the direction of like, hey, we have, you can be an infinite number of, you can have an infinite number of genders, and you have to be able to recognize them. You have to be able to, some people want it to be legislated, that there should be consequences for not understanding somebody's gender. To me, that's insane. And I think we all know it. And I think we're losing touch with reality.
But I feel like that's just a part of human nature, is that when something's been so far one way, and that people don't like it, they have to go like the extreme opposite to make sense of something. I think that there's usually like not this in between when things happen, when they realize something doesn't work. They don't want to like find a middle ground. They want like an extreme opposite. So that makes things challenging.
The counterbalance.
I don't. Yeah.
What'd you say, Eric?
Like a counterbalance. Yeah, people feel like they have to like offset. It going in one direction or something. So
yeah.
Well, and it's frustrating to watch because, I mean, just like from the perspective of somebody that's like a centrist, and to watch that happen, it makes humans look really stupid. I mean, it's like, what are we doing here? But I think I do believe that there's a growing group in this country, at least, of people that are trying to be more like, we may not agree on everything, and we may like, there might be economic issues that, we disagree on how to get everybody health care. We disagree on the specifics of what you should legislate or how you should legislate firearms, but this kind of understanding that there's like Douglas Murray is a great example. He came to mind first. Sam Harris is another example. Like these guys, those two are liberal guys, but they're able to have like more of an honest conversation about some of these issues. And I mean, I would throw Jordan Peterson in that camp too. Frankly, I know he's not the most popular guy, but like, there's a lot of, and I think that some of the bigger podcasts do that. They're able, some of this alternative media has been able to do that pretty well, and you're able to see more honest conversation about these things that you can't see. And I think that that's just a response to the public's fatigue over some of this. I've said this for a couple of years, and I believe it. I believe it more than I ever have, that we're in a cold civil war in this country. And
it's like the info war essentially. It's pretty much. I feel like it's going to be hard to ever leave that now. Just the way technology is. There's just
yeah. And then what does that look like when it starts to pop off? Which it has a little bit. Like during COVID, you had the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle. That was insane. You had riots on both sides of the political aisle, and people just are ready to get violent over it. And I think that the most important thing for people to do is keep their sanity, because people are tribal, and there's I don't remember the name of it, but there's a psychological term for being sort of seduced by the group that you're around. Like there's a thing where if you see somebody getting assaulted in public and nobody does anything about it, the reason that can happen is because no one person feels responsible. And I think it's a similar thing that we're seeing. And in a way, we're more connected because we have social media and the internet, but in some ways we're less connected too. And it's just, I mean, if you want to see what the real state of people's psychology is, just go into like a Facebook comment section or something.
Right. Yeah. It's so easy to be someone different behind the computer. You can just unleash, and when you're in front of people, you really can't be that brash. And it's most people aren't. It's like what Mike Tyson said. Like people, what's the quote? Something about being punched. Like I guess forgot what it feels like to be punched or something. You get in someone's face, and someone got in Mike Tyson's face one time on a plane, and he fucking punched him. Like, you dumbass. So,
he did that? I didn't hear that story.
Yeah, it's you could probably find it on YouTube, but you're right. It's a difference, man. People behind the keyboard. That's why I try to stay off social media as much as possible. I have this shit for the band, but other than that, you can just get sucked into an echo chamber, and you can drive you crazy because it feels like you're helpless because it's so like one-sided, and the other side is like pure evil and it's fear-mongering, and then they think the same about you, and it's easy to make those extremes on social media as opposed to person where you wouldn't just scream at people like that, you know?
Yeah, you're not going to go and just scream in somebody's face in public, you know?
It's like the Jungian... It's like the Jungian shadow is like, and like the collective unconscious is like more released online, it feels like, because it's just not tethered to, you know, cultural norms of like, you know, your church, your school, your community and everything. It's just now you're just throwing shade, if you will, you know, at people across the world and everything. So it's just unbridled,
Yeah, I wonder, I think this almost all the time. I had a bad habit. I got off Facebook first because it was just a political echo chamber, and I could tell that I was engaging in it. And then I got Instagram, and then that turned into the same thing. And I've caught myself recently doing that with YouTube comments. If I'm just bored or I'm on the toilet, I'll just lay YouTube comments everywhere, and it's turning into the same thing. Yeah, but if you don't catch, it's addicting. And you know, it's a way to just get in sort of let some of your opinions fly without any real consequence.
Right. So what I've done with that to help, like I do my best not to say anything, but I have it set up where if I do, I won't hear or reply. I won't see a notification. I won't have it so that I can know and I'll forget about it. So it's essentially like screaming into the void, just saying what I feel and not caring what like just needing to express it. And so when I don't have to have someone come back saying you're fucking wrong, like I don't get angry about that. It's like, well, what the fuck, dude? That's what I believe. Fuck you.
It's sad. I mean, I think Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think you are the most optimistic person I've ever met on some of these topics as far as I can see your grin there, but my face was covering yours. There we go. But you're probably the most optimistic person when it comes to these types of things. Like you're fairly certain that and again, don't let me put words in your mouth, but you're pretty optimistic about how that we're going to get over all of this, these growing pains that we have about these technologies.
Yeah, I just think that, we are moving forward. I mean, barring some catastrophic event or something like that, obviously something horribly wrong could happen to where, like, someone gets into power and takes over everything and just, fucks it ultimately. But I think, barring any extreme situation, it's just that collective that's moving forward, that there's like this social contract understanding that, I can't cut off my arm to save me. You know what I mean? Like, I have to make sure we all kind of stay together. Sure, I like to control the whole body and everything, but I can't just start chopping off limbs and then survive ultimately. So I just think that there's like a self-interest that kind of like helps us thrive a little bit. So.
Well, I got a question. This will be a good one for everybody to answer. What is the number one? What's the one thing that you believe right now we need to address as a culture? Like the most fucked up. Like this is if we don't fix this, I mean, it's pretty clear that we're in a rough spot right now. It's hard. Maybe it's hard to answer a single question. But.
I think I would say, focus on. I feel like it's a long list and it just trickles down, but like the problems that we're having with these big corporations, just it's you're killing the mom and pop store, you're killing communities. I feel like they're helping stuff. I feel it's too extreme. It's too many people have too much money, and I really believe that with the economy, for money to have value, it's zero-sum game because you don't want to have too much. So it's for you to have more, I have to have less, and I think that leads to just more problems with like the poor. What are they going to do for stuff? So when you have no house, like it's hard to even get a job, and you fall into that. But with that, that's the fear to get people to work. They're like, well, I don't want to be like that. And I hate when people use fear to keep control over you. I just don't like it. But I feel like a lot of that is like people are stressed out because it's work, come home, maybe have a few hours to myself, sleep, wake up, do it again. And even with that, you still can't afford to do a lot of things. It's so tight. I feel like it goes that way back and forth too often, and it's just ridiculously stressful. I know that was like a long answer, but basically we need to help. It's this trickle effect.
I'm putting a pin in that for maybe in the future. I'm curious about that conversation because you said that last week or the week before, and I kind of want to get into what you mean by that. For somebody to have more, you have less. I don't understand that, but we could talk about it some other time. But I'm writing it down so we'll remember. So it's corporation.
It's called the zero sum theory. If you want to look into it more.
Okay, I'm writing it down. What about you, Eric?
I think that probably the biggest thing right now is Ukraine, Russia, but also now Hamas and Israel.
That's a fun one.
So I think a lot of that, certainly war would probably be the biggest thing that is, I would say, an issue as far as like stability. I have to get more into, certainly we've heard lots of ideas and theories and truth and misinformation about what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, but with Hamas and Israel, I know that there's like some ancient, bad blood between both of them, but that's something I would
deep-seated, yeah.
What was that, Brian?
There's a bunch of deep-seated history with that conflict. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
So yeah, it's probably too deep for me to really get into, but like I certainly want to at least get my feet wet a little bit with it because I don't really know too much of what's going on. Besides, just like some ancient, blood brood thing kind of going on. But it seems to me probably war is the top one. But after that, if there's no war yet, it certainly seems like government and control, corporation tied together is the worry of like the world power taking over and what that looks like and everything. So
it's like the secular version of separation of church and state. You need separation of corporation and government.
Yeah.
So
that's, I guess, one thing that we can all agree on. I mean, I think that that's true too. That I say I'm a capitalist, but I don't believe that we actually live in a capitalist country right now because of the personhood that corporations have.
Well, what do you, how does it, I guess that's it. How do you define capitalism?
I believe in a free market. I believe that, I don't believe necessarily that because somebody else is, I don't believe that because I'm making more money, I'm taking it from somebody else. But I don't believe that we should be pumping money that's backed by nothing. That's a big one. I think that human beings, I was going to say this in my opening thing, but I guess I'll say it now. I think that one of the things that capitalism does real well is, and I think if you look back on human history, we have a lot of problems right now for sure. We have heated seats, we have air conditioning, we have a lot of things that almost nobody throughout history had. We live if you make over $34,000 a year, you live in the top 1% of the planet. I think that all of those things come from capitalism. I think that the internet comes from capitalism. I think the automobile does. I believe all of those things. It's easy to forget because you use them every day, but all of those things we have. But I think that the thing that is brilliant about it is that human beings, at the end of the day, we're mammals. We're animals, and animals compete with each other. And I think that I do believe that competition brings out a lot of good in people if it's done. I think that there's always going to be poor, there's always going to be rich. I don't think you can avoid that. And I think that we've gotten in a lot of trouble by trying to avoid that. Like the Chinese Cultural Revolution of 1968 was Eric and I both read a book. It was fiction, but the backdrop of it was that. And it got me to research it. Like, what's going on with our college kids and what happened at that time is crazy similar. And I think the Soviet Union, I think that this is a cliche, but Nazi Germany, I think North Korea, the thing that they all tried to do was try to create equity. And the North Korea, the DPRK is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. I mean, it all started trying to do this. But my point is just that capitalism took what humans are and our competitive nature, and it was able to use that as a way to help innovate and to allow us to compete with each other in a way that's nonviolent, in a way that allows us to reach something greater and then give it back for a price. And I think I am not so optimistic about humans that we can create a world in which that doesn't exist. And I think that we've gotten in a lot of trouble as a species by trying to do that. But I do. Just one more thing. The corporation thing, I'm completely with y'all on that. I definitely think that that's a way to cheat the system. I think that that's what they've done. I think that my biggest problem is just the ability to donate to politicians and a political party specifically. I think that can create a lot of problems. You can buy an election.
Yeah. Yes, you can.
I think I heard or read something about how Google and Amazon potentially are going to be under Congress is going to be looking into if they're truly monopoly and actually starting to break up Google and Amazon. I think that's actually starting to happen. So for what that's worth, because I think we could all agree that there's a fistful of companies right now that basically own the world.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's all these hedge funds that these franchise we own all this, but we own this market, we own this market, we own
Right. But Google is a big one for me because Google, the idea of they're picking winners and losers as far as who's on the first page of Google. What's that joke? Where to hide a dead body's on page 2 of Google. Because it's just like, so if you own that first page and what's on there, I mean, you're dictating what everyone's seeing and looking at, and you're almost dictating the collective consciousness at that point of like what's relevant and not relevant. So to me, that's probably the glaring version of a monopoly would be Google, in my opinion. So I guess Alphabet would be the parent company, right?
Patrick Bet David, who's a podcaster I've been listening to a lot more lately, he made an interesting point about monopolies. I'm gonna have to paraphrase it. It's been a little bit since I heard it, but he was just talking about cell phones. He was saying that 58% of smartphone owners in the U.S. have Apple, have an iPhone. He's like, that's a monopoly. It's just these little things that we don't really think about. And then so what do you do about that? And then you can even say like really, I mean, all three of us have an iPhone. We're contributing to slave labor with these things.
Well, Brian doesn't.
Cobalt mines.
What?
You don't have an Apple, right? You have an Android?
No, I have an Apple.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He turned to the dark side, dude.
Right? It was just easier because everyone else in the family had it, and when I was going back into teaching, and the school was an Apple school, and it was just easier to transfer stuff over when on the same. So I was like, well, this just makes sense for me to make my life easier. So
okay.
So
that's right. Because we've done like the shared notes and stuff. So that makes sense actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, like I think it's easy to say that Apple's monopoly. My only argument would be like Apple. It's like you have to like go out and choose and like buy the product. For me, like Facebook is weird and like Google is weird because like they pay like phone companies to have their search engine and like their app as like the default thing. It's like that's more nefarious to me. It's like what I think isn't like Facebook, like most of the world, it's like that's how they get to the internet is through Facebook or something. So yeah, that seems
they have Facebook has I don't remember which countries it is, but yeah, you're right. Like in the only there'll be cell phones that are given out to I don't want to say third world countries. That might be right. That might be wrong. I heard this a long time ago. But they, the app that they're given with their phone when they buy it is Facebook.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I read this, but yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's how they interact with the rest of the world.
Going on monopolies, there was I can't remember if it's called biopolies or biomonopolies, essentially where you have several companies in the same market, like soda, like you were saying before, like they're all like pretty much all costing the same, and then like they'll trade off weeks who's got the sale, so they're in complete control of the market on what the cost is. So I feel that's like a very broad thing, but it happens, and so I feel like monopolies, and then the bunch of competitors doing the same thing. Well, you don't really have any options, this or this, so it's a big problem with that I see.
Yeah, it's like the chip, chip thing, right? It's like everyone wants to like buy the better version of chips that isn't like used by killing seagulls or whatever. But it's like it's all the same company. They're making them the better version of chip and like the evil version of chip and everything. So
yep. It's like when people were like
chip.
Like potato chip. I was making a bad joke example or whatever, but
oh.
Well, it's like the real life thing is the whole like Bud Light, or was it which one did with the transgender
Bud Light
model? Mm-hmm. And then they were like, I'm not doing this, and they would get this other beer, and it's like that's still owned by the same company. Yeah, it's like, and all this shit, and they're like, well, why are these like free ones that like aren't owned by us that like cost so much more? I'm like, that's how that works,
right?
Yeah,
they can't compete. They have to have a bigger overhead, so they can charge more. But it's just crazy. Yeah, they own everything,
Well, and we also, what I think that piggybacking on the idea that there's no perfect society. I don't believe. I think that there's always going to be rich and poor and blah blah blah. I think that there's always going to be hard times and consequences, and I think one of the things that we've failed to do is we've bailed some of those companies out. and both parties have been guilty of it. But I think that sometimes our economy needs to go through a rough one. And I think that when we bail out some of these giant companies, I understand why they do it. They do it because, that company employs so many people or puts so much money into the economy. But I think that you need to let that happen. It's like catching a cold every once in a while to strengthen your immune system.
I feel like it would suck and be bad, but it would put harder pressure on other companies. Like, well, if we keep doing these crazy shit and making things bad, and you really need to hold the people fucking up accountable. I think that's a big problem, is that the people causing that, like, you get these people that are mad at students with student loans. They're like straight out of high school, like 18, 19, have like no degree in college or anything. Like they couldn't get a loan for a house. They couldn't even rent a car, but you're going to give them this loan that they have to pay back. They can't, like, there's no way to default on it. But these corporations who have all this experience and everything, they can take these companies and just go do this fucking shit, and it fucks the company up. And like, well, you guys get these $1 million bailouts because you're important, and it just kind of feels like, well, what the fuck? I know there's a lot of kids out there that are people that have the loans, but it's kind of messed up that they don't have the knowledge and that they're getting fucked over, while these people who do have the knowledge and experience of the market get the easy ride. It's like, it's
people are having their Social Security checks docked right now.
Yeah,
for student loans.
It's evil. It's
wild.
Predatory. I feel like, because the bank or these schools purposely like raise the prices, and you can't really change it, or you can go to different schools, but it still slowly increases and increases. It's still even ridiculous just to go to community college. Some people, it's just to better themselves. It creates a lot of problems.
I know Jordan.
Yeah,
Jordan Peterson is working on creating like an online accredited college, and he's trying to make it to where it's it's like a minuscule fraction of the normal college costs. I think he said something along like maybe $5,000 for 4 years worth of the schooling. Basically, he's just working to get it accredited and all that. But I think that would be amazing alternative. But also too, it does seem like there's a lot of companies that are having on like their applications, like, needs to have bachelor's or 4 years experience in the field. So it does seem, I don't know why that's happening necessarily. I guess maybe they just need workers, but if more of that keeps happening for whatever reason that it is happening, that would be certainly a good transition to be like, hey, like, school's not necessarily the answer. It's good to have an education, obviously, and everything, but there is experience involved, and it is a question of just like, well, what type of schooling is actually valuable versus experience.
Yeah, well, I think we're having to. I think that we're coming to terms with that right now. I mean, it really doesn't make sense to go to college unless it's a very few specific things, and it's kind of balancing out a little bit, because there are jobs like blue collar jobs. What's the guy's name? Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy.
Yeah,
he's been saying this for like a decade. He's been going on TV shows for a decade and saying like, what's going to happen is you have a whole generation of people that tell their kids to go be doctors or lawyers or businessmen or whatever. And you have so many people that have been flooded into those fields that there's a lack of plumbers and electricians. And I know a few actually out here. Jessica's, my girlfriend's, one of her best friend's husband is a plumber, and he makes a ton of money. I mean, they just bought a ton of land out here. And
you can get some good money. Yeah, definitely. Those trade skills, you can get a lot of. You can get some good money in some of those. A lot of them. I feel like there needs to be more of an option, because it was ingrained in us. You need to go to school. You need to go to college, and it was more of the academics. That there's less labor learning. So I feel like we were told to go to college. These are your options here. You can't really do that other stuff, but. And then people are like, well, you should have done like a trade school. Like, well, if we all would have done trade school, then we'd be over flooded with handymen and plumbers, and we'd be lacking the doctors and lawyers and all the
white collar
businesses, white collar stuff. So I mean, I think you really need to have it where you can go and you like a better option to choose like at a certain age. Like, okay, I want to focus more on trade school, or I want to focus more on like academia, but they're both very essential to the society. So
yeah, I think like, that'll probably balance out at a certain point. I think that we're all starting to realize that now. Like if you decide to sign up and go to college, like that's a pretty big commitment. You need to understand that, you know, you can't. The weirdest story that I've heard recently was somebody that I know pretty well got a bachelor's in business and can't do anything with it. And that was crazy for me to learn.
That shocks me too. But I guess it's overflooded. Everyone's like, well, business, where's the money? And so everyone had, like, a lot of people have a business, a degree in business. Yeah, so there's just, it's overflooded the market.
And I don't know the personal details of how much this person has actually put into it. And you know, I don't know. I mean, because in my head, I'm still like, there must have been something. But I don't know the nitty-gritty details of it. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you want to, you know, talk to your kids about going to school, it should be, you know, what I was told when I was a kid. My dad, when he was 18, he didn't know what he wanted to do. So he just packed his car from California and drove out to Oklahoma and went to school out there, to college. And his thought was, well, while I don't know, why don't I do this? And that's kind of what he was advising me to do. But I'm glad I didn't do that. That would have been a bad idea because well, even if I hadn't just fucked off like I did regardless. But that's all that extra money that is just going nowhere. And yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to send your kids to college, there needs to be a conversation about, okay, well, you know, you just can't. There's a few select things, I think, where if you want to do this, you go. If you want to be a surgeon, you can't go to a trade school. You gotta go. But you know, but other than that, it's pretty wild. Like law school's $250,000 on average. You know, it's insane.
Yeah, it's the bar to get into that. It's hard, and you know, people don't want to have that loan that they're paying back for years and years and years. And though eventually, hopefully, it will, you know, they'll be making profit, but it's not guaranteed. So
the Obamas were paying their student loans off while he was in office.
I believe it.
Ridiculous. That's crazy to me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what else, guys?
Well, did you answer, David? Like, what you think is the most important thing to focus on?
Oh, I don't think you did.
I didn't. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think, and I don't think that this is. I don't think you guys see this as much down there, but I'm going to make a prediction and say that you're going to, because I started to see it when I lived back there for a couple of years. I think that. Not to tie this into 1984, but I think that there's a real sinister. I think there's a problem with this, like, refusing to accept objective reality, and one of the ways in which you see that is this whole gender ideology. And for the record, I have friends that are trans. This isn't an anti-trans. If you're trans, it's fine. I don't have.
No, you hear that, people? He's anti-trans. That's how it goes. It's one or the other. You can't be in between.
But I've had these conversations with people, and they're like, "So what? What do you care?" Like, blah blah blah. And fair enough. But I think that when we don't even have an agreement on what is objective reality, again, historically, humans have when you aren't tethered to anything concrete anymore, that creates a lot of problems. And I remember hearing about this stuff in like 2015. You know, this stuff started to come out of colleges, and there's even as recently as 2019, there was a guy on Bill Maher's show, and 2019, not that long ago, he was talking about, you know, people are getting mad because you say men can't have periods. And Maher was like, shut the fuck up. Like, that's not a real issue. Now he's talking about it on the show, you know, in 2023. I think that this is becoming a bigger and a bigger issue. And
have you heard the... sorry, keep going.
I was just going to say, I think it boils down to not being... I think we all have to have an understanding of what objective reality is, because if we don't do that, then you can be or do whatever you want. And then, it spills into... you know, our legal system. And I think that is a very dangerous thing, but I think that we do it because we're trying to be open and inclusive and all that. And those are all great things, but I think that we're being very naive with the way that we're discussing it.
I can see that. Well, two things. The first thing is, like I was saying earlier, this is new to people, so it's gonna be like really big at first, and I feel like it will like level out. But yeah, you're right. There needs to be a better way to communicate about it, better more true discussion, so people have better understanding. But the other thing I was thinking, have you ever heard of the man period? Or the equivalent, like they say it's just not noticeable because 60 days or something like that. How our emotions and everything, they go on a similar or I don't know what chemical change in it, but it's just not as noticeable.
Right. Well, a funny example of this is Rainn Wilson, the actor who played Dwight in The Office, or 6 Feet Under. I forget his character's name now, but he got reprimanded, and I think his agent made him apologize because he said that saying women or men he said something like, it's silly that I can't say only women can have babies, something like that. And it created such a problem that his agent was like, we're going to have to drop you if you don't apologize for it. And he did. And there's, I think that your opinion is the same as Eric. Eric, you correct me. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I do think I see what you're saying, and I've had this conversation with Eric a lot. He thinks, that this is a fad and that it will die out. I don't think it will. I think that this is a problem that's going to grow. That's my prediction.
There's in some ancient cultures, they would have so big of a family that some boys would get neglected. So it was very common for the youngest men to, hang out with the women, dress up and be feminine. And even in Native American cultures, there was more than one. They had, I guess, the equivalent of gender. I don't know. They didn't have it just you're straight and gay. There's more. It's a very crazy. It's not black and white. So I think that's the thing that's tripping people up. There's so many people that they're used to, well, this is what it is because this is what we were told it was. When we're becoming we're understanding things differently, more knowledge, research, and so
I don't have a problem with somebody being trans, or I don't the issue that is really scary. Canada is doing a lot of scary shit right now, but one of them is trying to police people's speech when it comes to this. But but I think that we've just gone so fucking crazy that you can't say. I mean, look, I don't think anybody really believes that a they is a gender. I don't believe anybody believes that. I think if you're under a certain age, maybe you do because that's all you know. But I think that we're talking silly, and I think we all know it, but nobody's saying anything.
I feel like part of that is they need, they didn't want to come up with another word, but use something that's already in the language to put that as a label because they didn't know. I don't know. I feel like that's part of that, but I don't know how that came about. But yeah, it's a hard one for people to grasp.
I think that, none of us are religious, but I think that some of it is there's a lack of knowing where your place is in the world, and we're going to see a massive, where we already are. It's not, reported on too much, but putting kids on hormone blockers, you're castrating little boys, and they don't know. I mean, I've told Eric this. I was raised around 4 girls, and I had a lot of feminine qualities. I still do. And I wonder if I would have fallen for that had I been born 10 years later. And, nobody knows what they're doing when they're going through puberty and and I wonder if, I just feel real bad for somebody that tells a kid, hey, maybe you're a girl. And then they get put on hormone blockers before. And again, I know that y'all don't see this as much down there, but I think it's going to start growing. And I think it's going to be, at a certain point, it's going to become legislated. That's going to be an issue, though.
Yeah, I definitely feel it's there should be an age, like, you should need to be an adult to be able to make that decision. But there's also a lot of things where, like, parents, they have kids to do whatever the fuck they want. Like, they have them, they're just born to work on the farm. They're like, I'm going to force you to be a child actor and have a whole, so people are fucked up. So I definitely can see where there would be some parents doing that exact thing to for their ego. They really want to. Yeah. It's because it really is. When the parents are doing that from at a young age, when their minds are still aren't fully developed, they don't even have like the frontal cortex where they can critical think and everything. It's like that's just force them to do what you want because that's what you want.
Charlize Theron, aka the hottest woman on the planet.
Even in what was that movie?
Monster.
She was the what?
Monster,
yeah. Did you like her in Monster?
She adopted 2 African boys that are transgender now. It's like, that didn't happen, dude. Like, I mean, I believe, but you adopted 2 kids.
And they both just happen to be
transgender. Like, dude, that's what you were saying about having, kids for your own ego. That's what that is to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what I'm talking about when I say that this is a fad that'll blow over, is in the sense of like the way that it's taken the culture. I think that'll die down. I don't think that trans people and gay people are going anywhere because they've always been around, as Bryant suggested as well, which I agree with. But I just think that the way it's kind of like captured this time period, I think that's what's going to fade away. I mean, I think there's the hippies, there was the disco people, there was the fucking 80s, there was grunge, and then now there's the trans people everywhere. I just think there's, there's the ebb and flows of these things. It's the rebellion. Yeah, it's the rebellion against the establishment or whatever it is. It just takes different forms. So I think this one will die back down, and who knows what's next.
Woke, fellas.
But
we're too woke.
We're too woke.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see. I think that this is a lot more extreme than those other examples by far.
We've had this argument before, though, too, is that I would argue that hippies in the 60s, like, that was viewed as extreme to a lot of people that were in the 50s coming out of that era, I would argue personally. So.
Oh, I'm sure. But this is on another planet. As far as extreme goes,
I don't think so though.
I don't think it's that extreme. I mean, you've had people castrating kids for years. I know it's not the same thing, but I mean, I feel that's
they used to.
Eunuchs are a very big thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, but it's not. It's the psychology behind it.
Yes, I heard an interesting thing about like with them competing in sports, and I always thought like if you go back and look at like some of the early Olympics. And you see what won gold, and then you go to today, what won gold, and how much has changed. And I feel like with the separation of gender in sports, people are like, well, women can never compete. Well, we don't give them a chance to evolve to do that. I feel like that'd be really interesting to have a league that does that. And I think it should be something. Hormone levels would be an adequate way to judge things, because there are some guys that are naturally born with a lot less testosterone and everything. So it's already
got bone structure and muscles and all that too, though. Yeah. Like in running, women have a 5-minute handicap in marathon running. That'd be an interesting conversation to have sometime, though, because I do think that that's something that is at the forefront of our zeitgeist, our cultural zeitgeist, and that would be something to have a conversation with about.
And then have a league of sports where there's like all drugs are acceptable and just like go full out and see what happens.
I go watch that for sure.
It's like the MMA of drugs. Just like which drug is the best drug? Yeah.
People used to go watch executions for fun, so of course they're going like, okay, they're roided up and the best chemicals to the strongest they can be, and now they're going to show you what they can do. Like, yeah, people would fucking watch that, of course. But,
right.
I got to go to dinner here in a minute, but
just starve yourself, bro. Become Gandhi.
Yeah, it's red velvet pancakes. I can't do that.
Ooh,
pumpkin pancakes. I like pumpkin pancakes.
Oh, like you're at a cafe.
I know. Yeah. So, do you just wanna just throw this up? come up with like an AI generated logo and just throw it up?
Yeah, we can. I'll give it to Eric, and he can like cut out like some of the beginning words.